Happy politics, and welcome to a podcast that will definitely not be preempted by Dr. Bonnie Henry. Rob. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Orca. I'm kidding. And I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman, Vice President Communications, Independent Contractors and Business Association. Maclean, you never looked better than you did on that Czech show last week.
Well, I have to agree. We all got our formal wear on, and we're definitely wearing pants. And yeah, I got to see everyone without makeup and wearing glasses.
Dr. Bonnie, bouncing guests since, about February. Well, no, not February. Since about March 2020.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. So, well, can hardly blame Rob for accepting the offer, but we had some good fun at his expense on the podcast portion of that show.
Yes. Well, and Dr. Bonnie, anytime you want to come on this show and bounce Maclean with me, feel free.
That may just happen next week. We'll see. And speaking of Dr. Bonnie Henry and the province's ongoing pandemic efforts, since we last recorded, both you and I have received our first doses. I think both of us AstraZeneca, is that right?
Yep, correct. We are this much closer to being invincible, Maclean.
Yes. Now, yours was Thursday. Mine was Sunday. How did it go for you?
Well, Thursday, I'd never been so happy to go to a Walmart as I was on Thursday. The Walmart pharmacy never seemed so beautiful a place. I went. I know some people have been having emotional, spiritual, if you read Lisa Eustace's tweet about the Trudeaus, even sexual experiences in getting the AstraZeneca shot, or sexy experience might be the better way of putting it. I had none of that. I did feel a little bit of relief. Took the shot, woke up in the middle of the night though, with the most incredible chills I've ever experienced. I had 2 layers of pajamas on. I had a duvet cover. I had a blanket over that. I was cuddling the dog, and my teeth were chattering. I was so cold. That just reinforced to me what a wuss I would have been if I would be if I ever really contracted COVID. If I can't even stand the chill from the shot, chances are I would not make it for 3, 4, 5, 6 days of that, or God forbid, being a long hauler. So it was pretty rough. Woke up that Friday morning. I've never been hungover, but I'm told the symptoms are similar, kind of post-concussion syndrome maybe, like felt sluggish, a little bit of a headache, a little bit of nausea. Just took it easy that Friday, worked from home, did the bare minimum of calls, that sort of thing. And then by Saturday, fit as a fiddle. How about you?
Mine was Sunday afternoon at a Save on Foods I don't regularly go to, but I was very happy to take the appointment. By Sunday, my appointment was Sunday at 2 p.m. if I remember right. By about dinner, I was kind of feeling like tired, but nothing too alarming. But yesterday, Monday, oh my God, Jordan, not a good day. Not a good day. I got up in the morning to do the fin, and my wife and son woke up about an hour later, and they both said good morning, and she just stopped and looked at me and said I look like the Undertaker, and that she'd be taking me into school that day. And I mean, the hangover comparison is pretty good, actually. It's what it's like. It's very achy, and your head hurts, and there's no energy. And I didn't get that. I was remembering you telling me about the chills, and I didn't get them until last night. I literally went from my couch where I was watching documentaries towards the bedroom because Ian was having his bath, and in the course of that walk, I became colder than I've been in years.
It's crazy.
My teeth were chattering.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which scared the hell out of my wife.
Yeah.
But today, other than my arm still feeling pretty sore, and I don't like raising it above about here, I'm not quite as energetic as I normally am, but it's the worst is well and truly behind me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what made it worse for me. The fact that my wife had absolutely no reaction whatsoever to it. Like, she just skated through. And I'm like, man, I'm weak.
I saw right before I went for my shot, I saw a tweet from Chris Perry from Equity Guru saying that the only side effect he had was getting the best sleep of his life because he was drowsy, and he called it a feature, not a bug. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
Right, Chris, my man, I'm right there with you. No, that did not happen.
No. Yeah, it was that was something else. But Generation X, I think there was 5 or 6 of us. 5 of us from ICBA went last week. We've had 3 or 4 more this week. Doing the right thing, getting our AstraZeneca, trying to protect other people, including some who were, someone who works for us, very nervous about it, is going tomorrow, very nervous about the clotting issue and stuff, but still realizing, weighing the risk and that this is much better. So, important to do. I referenced that Lisa used a tweet because it's rare that a BC political reporter's tweet gets kind of national attention. And man, she got ratioed a little bit on it. But she was tweeting out about the Trudeau's going to get their AstraZeneca shot because they, of course, are good Gen Xers like you and I. And, it was just like a totally different kind of experience than maybe I had at mine. Like at mine, I'm like coming after a day of work and I got my bag and I'm just kind of sitting there in Walmart and, you kind of slumped over, you get your shot and you go. For them, it was like, this was a photo op, and as it should be. He's the Prime Minister of Canada, and he's trying to show, lead by example. But it was like, rolling up the sleeve and like flexing the bicep and showing the tattoo and getting, and then, Sophie, pulling down the sweater on the side, and it's like, and Lisa tweeted out that something to the effect that vaccines had never seemed so sexy as in that moment. That got ratioed hard because Trudeauism, what do they call it? Truanon now? Is that what was coined by Chris Cuomo in the States? Truanon?
No, I have not seen that.
Trudeau apologist. It was coined by a CNN commentator. I want to say Chris Cuomo, but I'm not positive it was him. But it was, they call it Truanon. This is this fad of people who like everything they do is perfect. That was the tweet of the week in BC politics because it went everywhere, man. And not one that I particularly enjoyed, but I enjoyed the responses. So does that count?
I mean, they are attractive people, but
there's nothing. It's a vaccination.
No counting for taste, Jordan, but they are. Yeah. I mean, Sophie Gregoire is kind of like the Kate Middleton of Canadian politics. She's just an attractive woman.
Right. Well, she's not in the media as much as she used to be. Like she's not.
That's true.
Like she's kept a. I guess she's kept a lower profile during COVID. Yeah, we all have, Jordan. Okay, so that's fair. Fair enough.
Fair enough. Hey, and actually, I want to bring up one thing. Right before you and I started taping this morning, it's Tuesday at 2, someone I like and respect, and I'm not going to identify, DM'd me saying with a reasonable thing, I think, saying that they saw my tweets about the AstraZeneca vaccine hangover and it being very, very real. What we just talked about off the top of the show. And they said, I wish you wouldn't say things like that because, I think there's a risk of scaring people off getting the vaccine. And, you're undermining confidence. And I wrote him back saying, I disagree with you, but I hear what you're saying. And so right before we went on air, I tweeted something to that effect saying, someone I like DM me this. I'm not going to identify them. First of all, I think they're wrong. But second of all, yes, the hangover was rough, but it's mostly over. And it's like, take your shot. It's worth it. Trust me. I think I'm the outlier. I had a really bad day yesterday, and today I'm mostly fine. If you get offered a shot, take it. Please, trust me. If this is you and you saw me tweeting earlier going, I'm going to skip that. No. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is what you said actually very well is that if you and I had a really bad experience with the vaccine, that might indicate that we would have had a really rough time in COVID, which, that makes perfect sense to me. So yes, if this is you and you saw people like me or anyone else saying, I had a rough couple days, I was achy, I was sore. That's true. Lying does nobody any good, but take your shot.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. It's a tough one. Like I understand what that person's saying, but at the same time, at a time where trust in institutions and media is at an all-time low, if media stops reporting on side effects, and that's only going to add to the real conspiracy theorists, not the true anons, but the real conspiracy theorists, right? Like. We gotta be grown up enough to have an honest dialogue about it. Like there's pros and cons to everything. And for me, I'm on blood thinners. For me, the chances of clots are even lower than it is for an average person taking AstraZeneca. But I did my due diligence on that. Like I went and checked. I called my doctor. I had checked with a specialist just to make sure that my common sense was correct. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing due diligence. I think in the past year we've all learned how to weigh out risk for ourselves. And, there are things that everyone does, even the most ardent Dr. Henry rule followers take risks from time to time. Partly because it's impossible to follow all the Dr. Abani rules because they're all over the map in some ways, right? Like, so, sometimes, like I saw tweets from people and, they'd gone to a hotel on the weekend in their community, and this was controversial on Twitter. But it's a person who hardcore is a rule follower and looked at the rules and said, well, you can go within your community. You can camp within your community. You can go to a hotel within your community. I want to support this business. I need some time, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's fine. But, that was, let's not make a mistake. That was a risk they calculated. It's okay. We're all, ICBA has a big group benefits business. We talk about risk management quite a bit here. When it comes to personal health, everyone's become much better risk managers here in the past year than we were certainly in 2019.
Yeah, and I mean, and if we, and I'm using the air quote here, we, the commentary, had collectively decided that we were going to ignore or, just not talk about people having a rough day after getting a shot. Can you imagine all the calls to, 911 or even just your doctor that people who were having a day like I had yesterday and you had Friday, I mean, there would be panic because they'd be checking Twitter like, no one's having these side effects.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with me. So, I mean, obviously that's just not, that is not a solution.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So our vice president region, Mike Davis, he's in Prince George. He was the first one of us to get the shot. He then had the exact reaction I did. Woke up in the middle of the night with chills, felt sluggish the next day. So when I got it, I wasn't scared. I'm like, oh, this is exactly what Mike was saying. And so you kind of go through it, and then you had your experience, and you're like, oh, this is exactly what Jordan said would happen. Yeah. Okay, so anything. For me, for people looking at AstraZeneca, think of that as sort of the base reaction, like. You're get the chills, feel sluggish for a day, and then feel better. And then anything better than that is a bonus. Look at it as like silver lining.
Exactly. I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned wellness. Yesterday in the Orca, we published a piece by your boss, Chris Gardner, and he was talking about a wellness program that the ICBA has, but that wasn't really the takeaway that I think a lot of people would have from that. Chris shared something really remarkable that I didn't know about him, and without dancing around the issue, because even now that I've read it and published it, I'm still kind of like, whoa. He admitted that, or I shouldn't say admitted, he shared that when he was 5 years old, his father committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And so, this obviously had a big impact on him. And he used this as a way to talk about, why employers and industry in general needs to do a good job making sure their people know that, it's okay to reach for help, because the alternative is much worse. Now, obviously, Chris a lot better than I do. You see him on a day-to-day basis. Tell me about that in the piece and where he went with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. Very powerful disclosure from someone who has a lot of influence in British Columbia, especially in business circles. So Chris, for 3 years running, has been on the Vancouver Power 50 list. ICBA is the largest trade association in British Columbia as far as membership and our various business platforms. We're very large. We have 52 people on staff now, offices in Prince George, in Calgary, and here in Burnaby. So significant business leader. And I would think that for Chris, probably, I don't know the exact number, but I bet you less than 24 people outside of his family knew the story. I was one of them, and we spent a lot of time working on a wellness program, a workplace wellness program for construction workers in BC. And construction workers are 7 times higher suicide rate than the average population. Construction is still a business that's about 90% male, and stoic young males who don't know or don't feel comfortable all the time expressing their feelings. A lot of the wellness stuff we've seen out there really is kind of tailored to office workers and the intelligence, what they call the innovation economy, and the kind of white collar stuff. There isn't a lot for blue collar workers. And we talked to folks in our industry who had a member of their crews commit suicide or overdose accidentally on opioids, which are at record highs. Those are traumatic experiences for the family involved, of course, for the friendship circle, for the colleagues, for the company, for the industry. These are hard things to deal with. So when we were talking about rolling out wellness, Chris is 58 years old now, 57, 58. He is a self-made story. His father committed suicide when he was 5. They moved from Labrador City across the country to start over in Burnaby. He put himself through UBC, put himself through law school, went to Korea, worked there for Samsung as a lawyer, and self-made guy, former chief of staff or principal secretary to Christy Clark, or helped run Britco Homes, has done a lot of important work. I think was at a point in his life where he was like, you know what, it's important that we talk about these issues. And my sense is he may have thought it was inauthentic for him to talk about the issues globally and not talk about the fact that he personally knew. And so he disclosed it, and it was a big deal. And there's Kirk LaPointe had him on the Business in Vancouver podcast yesterday for 40 minutes, and they really went through a lot of these issues and how it shaped Chris's life and professional career. And for Chris, it became, I don't want to end up like that, and so I'm going to work really hard to make sure that I'm successful and dealing with these things. And now Chris is in a point where he runs an organization like ICBA that has the resources, the talent, the ability, and the reach to do something for mental wellness. And we've talked about it at ICBA, okay, we're not sure really how to quantify results. Obviously, if overdoses among construction workers go down, and that's great and important, and we're good, but we're not sure how to quantify the results of a wellness program. But the thing for us was, if it helps one family, if it helps, one colleague group, one cohort of workers at a site, it's worthwhile. It's worth us trying and doing. It's not going to make anything worse. It's only going to make things better.
Yeah.
And so that was really the takeaway there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point, if you're reading this, it's not specifically about the program at your company, although, that's where company Chris runs, so obviously he can speak to it and, in fact, make it happen. Mm-hmm. But also just in a more general way that, we have to make sure that people know that they can experience dips and that they should never feel like they can't ask for help. And that's never been more important. I think the pandemic has made that very, very clear.
Yeah, and Emil Scheffel wrote a piece for the Orca a while back, former executive director of the BC Liberal Party. He's launched and I should know the name of the brand.
We Persist.
We Persist, that's right. And talking across the political spectrum with people who work in politics about mental health issues. My suspicion is he'll want Chris on a podcast soon. Disclosure time, it's been rough the past 15 months for a lot of people. It's been rough for us and our family. You have the grief of people passing away and you're not able to properly mourn. You have the grief of the loss of opportunity for your kids to do things that they love, and graduation, all those things. You have the grief of just the brain space it takes to manage those risks and to change the way you plan days to make sure you have the extra 20 minutes to go through the protocols to do all these things. It's a lot of mental anxiety. I've talked to a counselor 2 or 3 times this year during some low points to help me kind of work through tools and get me back on some practices to help me through some anxious times. It's good to talk about these things. It's good to be upfront about it. Probably, chances are, more of us are experiencing it right now than are not experiencing it or have over the last year. And if we were just brave enough to talk about it and to listen and to try to help one another, I think it would go a long way. So I know that doesn't normally fit into my crazy ranting Jordan brand, but look, politics is one thing. Then there's life issues. That's a totally different thing. Making sure that you're getting the help that's needed and knowing that there are listening ears, that's so important in this day and age.
I couldn't agree more. Yesterday, or sorry, not yesterday, last week, last show, a week ago today, was the budget. And Jordan, it's kind of amazing that that wasn't the top issue here for us. We could have led the show with talk about the budget when we could lead the show with talk about anything. God knows most of you who are fans of the show have heard us talk about things like football more than once. But it's kind of remarkable how that budget just kind of came and went, even though it was kind of delayed for 2 months or so. There's lots of commentary out there that this is kind of almost by design. This was intended to be a middle-of-the-road budget that didn't make a lot of big splashes in either direction, and it kind of seems to be the case, doesn't it?
Yeah. I wrote in our show notes, the budget was almost like a puff of smoke. It happened, then it dissipated, it was gone. And, I haven't been following QP religiously this week. It's only day 2, but it's been very busy with the wellness rollout. I don't sense a lot of media critique after day 1 on the budget. I know Rob had a piece on the Orca, kind of looking into some of the help funds or whatever, but not much. There wasn't a lot of there. And I compared it a little bit to the federal budget. I feel like I've heard more about the federal budget afterwards than I have about the BC budget. There's a big childcare promise. Now, of course, there was a confidence vote in the House, and that will do it. And the NDP did prop up the Trudeau Liberals. But you didn't have that with the BC thing. It just kind of happened, and then it was gone. And that concerns me a bit, because that's a $60 billion document. That is the expenditure for British Columbia this year. There's a lot in there that I think bears scrutiny and reporting. But it just goes to show you, no matter what the issue is, it all comes back to COVID. COVID just overshadows everything completely. Even now, even 13 months after, or 14 months, or wherever we're at after the initial outbreak, it still overshadows everything. And that's starting to become, I think, problematic for the rest of the public policy agenda, because there are things that we need to deal with other than COVID. Opioid addiction being a great example. I don't know. I just wonder, okay, we're going to get a bunch of vaccinations hopefully in the next few weeks. The third wave will subside, no doubt. At some point, we're going to have to start looking at issues other than COVID.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, 2 things I would say to that. Rob's piece, one of a couple pieces he wrote about the budget in the Orca, was about how, and I'm compressing a bit here, but essentially the big splash is maybe yet to come, because there is billions in unallocated contingency funding in this budget that the NDP are sort of clearly setting aside for either rapid response to emergencies, or more likely, to throw at political fires as they come. And so, the story of the budget may yet need to be written. And I think that's that's a good take. The other one that you mentioned, you're not watching QP today. I didn't watch it yesterday for reasons we discussed off the top of the show. But today it was interesting that the finance minister was asked about the lack of paid sick leave in this budget. And among her answers, she kind of insinuated that the BC government may have been kind of expecting something along those lines from the federal budget, which obviously wasn't there. Now, I want to go back and see the exact phrasing, and it wasn't, we were told this would be in the federal budget. It wasn't like that. It was more sort of, the budget was one day before, we were looking forward to it, and we're disappointed when it wasn't there. So it sounds to me like they may have expected some things from Ottawa that they didn't get, but again, this just happened half an hour ago now, so yeah. I would like to go back and actually read the transcript.
Well, if you look at all the signals Horgan was giving all through the past year, it was very clear that he'd brought it up with Trudeau. I think at one point Doug Ford said, John Horgan's done a lot of work on that with the Prime Minister, and we're hopeful. Big boy politics time. Did John Horgan present this to the Prime Minister? Did he think he had an agreement and it fall apart? Did he think the Prime Minister was a little bit more on board than he was? If that's the case, that's a bad read by Horgan. You got to know facts, and sick pay will eat up a big chunk of that contingency funding if BC's deciding to fund it themselves. It is interesting. That's an interesting admission and a story that probably bears some following in the days and weeks to come, because there'll be a lot of finger pointing between Ottawa and Victoria at some point here about who dropped the ball on this.
Is there anything more Canadian than stories about levels of government that are arguing about who should be doing what and who should be paying for what?
No, other than maybe playing a pickup hockey game with the Sutter brothers in Flin Flon, Manitoba. There's nothing more Canadian.
That's true. Drinking a moose head.
Drinking a moose head, and of course you're skating on, is Flin Flon on Thunder Bay? I'm assuming so.
No. Flin Flon's like northern Manitoba, isn't it?
Doesn't that touch Thunder Bay?
No. Thunder Bay is in Ontario. It's close. It's along the highway to Winnipeg.
Churchill, Manitoba is a port on Thunder Bay.
No, it's not. That's on Hudson Bay.
Oh, Hudson Bay. That's what I meant. Sorry,
James
I meant Hudson Bay.
Which is a part of
Sorry,
Hudson
Thunder
Bay,
Bay's the city. Thunder Bay's the city. By the way,
Thunder Bay's on Lake Ontario.
If you're ever looking for a great podcast, Thunder Bay.
Not Lake Ontario, Lake Superior. My God,
yes.
We are failing geography in this podcast.
Thunder Bay is a great podcast by the folks at Canada Land, and I don't love all of Canada Land's politics sometimes, but Thunder Bay looked at missing and bullied and murdered Indigenous people in Thunder Bay, and it's a fantastic podcast. So if you're ever looking for a podcast, it's well worth a listen.
It's true. I have only listened to a couple episodes, but it is fascinating. The other thing we are going to talk about today, and I will preface this by saying that I don't think we have enough information to really dive in. The InBC announcement is happening, as we record. The technical briefing started after we started recording. We have the announcement they're doing this today. It's a $500 million investment fund, I suppose. But in terms of, how it's going to be set up, how it's going to be administered, and how they're going to, distribute the money, we just don't have a lot of information yet, unless you've heard things that I was given some materials literally as we were about to start recording that I haven't even had a chance to look at.
Well, nothing says podcast more than shooting from the lip here, and forget the facts. But InBC, first of all, it sounds like sounds like that terrible song that Gordon Campbell campaigned to in 2005. Remember that 4BC? InBC.
I mean, I've heard of it, but that was before my time here.
You're not missing anything. InBC, $500 million. So I pulled the website. 4 slides. InBC is a $500 million strategic investment fund of the government of British Columbia. Okay, $500 million. I'm going to need a little more than 4 slides on a website, folks, about where that money is going. This money was actually not tied to this year's budget. It was announced on September 17th, 2020, then came out money. And here's what it claims. It claims it's going to invest in small and medium-sized BC companies to help them scale up, reach their highest potential, while generating returns that support a growing economy that benefits all British Columbians. So, questions I'll be looking for today. Is this just a corporate welfare scheme? Is it just a slush fund for politicians to reward people who they like for ideological reasons? That's the first one. And really, that's probably an ever tweet by Jordan. That's fine, I get you. Number 2, when I see government talking about things like growth potential, growing and anchoring talent, intellectual property, innovation, I get very nervous because government does not have a good track record in any of those fields, and in fact has an abysmal one. There's many examples, for example, of things that should have been slam dunks. Solar panel companies getting huge grants from government dollars and then disappearing within months. I worry about what this is. The funny thing is, in the Financial Post roundup this morning, there was a piece about the Tim Hortons Innovation Cafe. I guess 2 years ago, Tim Hortons had rolled out this fancy new kind of restaurant in downtown Toronto where hip youngsters could come and work on their laptop. And it was nicer and it had nicer kind of products. And this was going to be the wave of the future for urban Tim Hortons. And this week they shut it down. Because, and the financial analyst said, hey, listen, when long-term legacy brands start talking about innovation, it's a last gasp. That is not, just run screaming from whatever project they're saying. It's the unicorn frappuccino of Starbucks. Just go, run, don't try it, just get out of there. I wonder about that in this context. You talk about a government investing in innovation economy. I'm not sure, anyone with talent to do these kind of investments would already be in that business and then therefore should be ruled out of actually managing these investments. I'm sure there'll be some political separation between this fund and the actual cabinet themselves, but at the same time, there'll never really be separation because cabinet will always appoint them and they'll always be responsible for them. It feels slush fundy to me, and I imagine a lot of people will be looking for some details. And I think 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll be looking back at this maybe as a $500 million failure. Who knows?
I mean, next week we'll have a lot more. We can dive into it then, or as you're right, 3 years from now, we'll see. The thing we should close on is our quasi-weekly feature about what's new in the BC Liberal leadership race. I suspect you're about to tell us there's not much new above the surface, but above the surface, Jordan, is not why we come to you. We come to you to find out what's going on underneath.
Well, underneath the surface is I think you're seeing some campaigns lining up for a post-Victoria Day pre-summer campaign launch. So really this is the key window. That kind of May 25th to June, look at my calendar. Yeah, May 20th to June 25th, I would say would be your key thing.
Okay.
You don't want to announce Canada Day or beyond because it's summer and it's BC and who cares? Like, well, all we want to do is get to the Okanagan and start eating peaches. Like, we don't care.
Especially this year.
Yeah, peaches and beaches. That's all I care about now for this summer. So you're not going to do it then. If you wait till the fall, I think you're ceding too many months to Ellis Ross and Gavin Dew and those guys. Even if you are under the radar doing stuff all summer, you're risking being exposed as an official campaign. So my sense is we're into the sweet spot, that first 3-4 weeks of June. I would bet money on the sophisticated campaigns like Kevin Falcon, Renee Merrifield announcing then, Mike Lee as well. This is probably where we may lose some of the folks who were kicking tires, and maybe hadn't fully gone in. Where's the Tom Shapitkas at? Where is the Val Litwins at? Is it possible? Aaron Gunn, I'm not so sure he's not a conventional candidate, so I'm not sure he fits into a conventional window. But at some point he's got to make a decision whether he actually really wants to do this or if he just wants to keep getting clicks. That's up to him. He's gotten a little bit quiet in the public realm, which is rare for him. So is he up to something, or is he just, has he made a different decision? Who knows? Just to start to highlight that, that kind of, May 31st, June 1st, I think you'll start to see 2 or 3 of these campaigns announced. They've got to come out eventually. They can't let Gavin continue to run around, write op-eds, get all this free media. Eventually they have to get into the race and start, building their support across the party.
Yeah, you're right in that there's only 2 who are official, and one of those is official with an asterisk, and that's Gavin Dew has officially launched. He's in. That's it. Ellis Ross is official, but he hasn't officially launched, if that makes sense. And that's it. That's the field right now. And you're right. There are a lot of people that we all know are running. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think there'll be a couple surprises. I think there will be, and I don't know of anyone in particular. I'm not hinting at something, but there will almost certainly be a surprise entry, and there will be a surprise someone who does not enter. For whatever reason, because in the last leadership campaign for the BC Liberals, one of them had to pull out partway through because the funding kind of fell through, and everyone wants to avoid that.
Bernier, is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, Mike Bernier. Sorry, I didn't mean to dance around it. But yes.
Yes, I remember that. Mike Bernier was going to be my choice. Thanks, Mike.
So all the ducks will need to be in a row before you officially launch, and so we'll see. Next, that's how far are we out from Victoria Day? Basically a month today, almost
1, 2,
exactly.
3, 4 weeks today is Victoria Day.
Okay, so you're saying it'll be quiet for the next 4 weeks, most likely.
Yeah, well, I just don't see. Maybe you might sneak one in here, but my sense is that they'll want to go into that June window. Look, you want to be out. We just talked about how COVID overshadows everything else. If you can get out of the 4th wave, past the vaccination. Kind of hump and into June, then you can come out. If you're Kevin Falcon, you can come out, and then it's not all about COVID. You're not overshadowed by COVID. You don't have to talk about so much the rollout plan or Dr. Bonnie. You can talk about building back better, essentially. How we're going to help the economy recover. And I think there'll be more appetite for that discussion as the fear subsides and as the numbers hopefully dwindle, but at least drop off slightly. That's why I think probably June.
Okay. We should close on something that's completely non-politics related. Jordan, how are your Packers going to do at the draft this weekend?
God, the NFL draft complex is unbelievable. I cannot listen to another podcast about a mock draft or it is the worst. But I'm hoping, here's what I really hope. There's this Minnesota wide receiver. I think
Bateman.
Yes, in 40 years, the Packers have only picked, I think, 3 wide receivers in the first round. I'm hoping for a 4th. I'm hoping it's Rashad Bateman. And if it is, I've already told the boy, Jackson, as soon as that pick comes in, as soon as we know the number, we're ordering matching Bateman Green Bay jerseys. They will be in the mail and to us by the time kickoff happens. We will go full in on Rashad Bateman, one of our Bateman bros. That is my hope, which means, of course, the Packers will end up picking some obscure offensive tackle that they plan to convert to guard, who will end up being no doubt a Pro Bowler, but secretly I'll resent him for the rest of his career because he wasn't Rashad Bateman.
The Broncos had a player named K in the early 80s and early 90s, a starting tight end named Clarence K. And this was, back before the days we could easily get customizable jerseys, especially in Calgary, where I grew up. And so, no, I did not have a K Broncos jersey, but I kind of always regret that.
Yeah, it's not good. A friend of mine, she was a huge Canuck fan, Brenda Alberts. She passed away a few years ago. Andrew Alberts got signed by the Canucks. She went right out, bought herself an Alberts jersey, and she never regretted it. She loved it. One other non-politics thing. Have you been watching Young Rock?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Should I be watching it?
The premise is cheesy, where he's running for president and all that. Who cares about that? It's worth watching, Maclean. There's a couple episodes, and it's basically a love letter to pro wrestling from the 80s. Oh, Andre the Giant's in it, Macho Man, Junkyard Dog, the Wild Samoans. Of course, Rocky Johnson is in it. So, there are things about it, and I just watch it. They scripted out a battle royal, and Rocky's mother-in-law, who's booking it, ends up screwing over Rocky, and it's so great. Oh, the Iron Sheik is in it. It is that battle royal episode. It was like Jordan's childhood on screen now, and I was there for it. So yes, all that to say yes, Young Rock, worth it if you were an 80s wrestling fan like me.
How do you cast Andre the Giant? That seems to me like the most uncastable person imaginable.
Yeah, he's it's pretty good. I'm not sure the actor's name, but he does all right. And of course, he's got the thick French accent, and it's funny. The Macho Man, and so many of them have passed away now, right? Like Andre and Macho, and obviously Rocky Johnson and Junkyard Dog, and I'm not sure about the Wild Samoans, and so there's this tinge of something like, I'll never get that back, right? The mom is taken over, High Chief Peter Maivia's widow is taken over booking the territory after he passes away and running the promotion. She calls her old friend Vince McMahon, for advice or to borrow a wrestler, and you're like, yeah, this is great, right? Fantastic. Just, great show. If you're into wrestling at all and you're not watching Young Rock, just roll your eyes through the preamble part and get to the good stuff. There's a whole episode on living the gimmick. And if you're getting caught not living the gimmick, the thing to do is to double down on living the gimmick. You're all in. You don't not live the gimmick. There's a Ric Flair cameo at one point. It's fantastic.
Speaking of living the gimmick.
Yes. Well, I'm just waiting for I can't wait for a Hart crossover at some point. Now I'm like, Brett, this is the show Brett should be making about the Harts growing up in Calgary, right? You can have pimple face 14-year-old Chris Jericho running around being a pain in the ass, and just think what you could do.
I would watch that show. I would produce that show.
I'd watch the hell out of that show. We gotta find who should run that show. Maybe Brent Butt. Should we get him on board to run that show for us?
Sure. It's got to be someone Canadian. It's got to be someone from the prairies who gets it. It's hard to explain that kind of thing. When I grew up in Calgary, they were so off topic. It's not even funny. But when I grew up in Calgary in the 80s, it's a different world. Wrestling was respected. Most of us had at least one of the Harts as a substitute teacher at one point in time, myself included. And wrestling results were in the newspaper.
Yep.
Basketball results were not. Because who cares? In fact, I'm old enough to remember, I don't know why this is, I need to look into this, but this is true. I'm old enough to remember when basketball was listed in the results, when it was listed as cage. I don't know why it was called that.
Wow.
But it would be, cage, and then it'd just be the tiniest little print, Los Angeles, some high number, Minnesota. And that was my first exposure to basketball. It'd be it's this obscure niche sport that some Americans care about. Probably how most Americans feel about lacrosse.
I had no idea.
Much has changed since then.
Yes, much has changed. No, the Stampede wrestling stories and it's so great. The dungeon and the Heart House, and you can just do so much there. So, I'm going to enjoy Young Rock. Hopefully it gets renewed for a few more seasons. And then let's Canada, CBC, you're out there. You got billions of dollars just floating around, thanks to Trudeau. Spend some of it on something that I would actually care about for once, other than Justin McElroy. I care about him. Spend it on a Heart Foundation, or I guess you can't call it.
Let's do Heart Story. We need a new Schitt's Creek. So it's a good idea.
I'm in.
All right. Well, until then, and probably just until next week when we do our next show.
God bless you. God bless you for sticking this out to the very end, whoever you are. DM Maclean and I and tell us that you stuck it out to the very end, because all two of you we want to thank in person.
So there's more than two. There's dozens. He's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. Happy politics.